How did the Peggy Eaton affair lead to John C. Calhoun's becoming Andrew Jackson's enemy and much more of an outspoken anti-federalist and advocate for the South's interests? The Peggy Eaton affair was a scandal involving President Andrew Jackson's cabinet and their wives. Essentially, the scandal was an effort led by Floride Calhoun, the wife of Vice President John C. Calhoun, to socially ostracize John Eaton and his wife Peggy. The reason for this scandal was that the cabinet and their wives did not approve of the circumstances surrounding the Eatons' marriage, and they thought Peggy failed to meet the moral standards of a cabinet wife due to her low-class upbringing and behaviors.
The affair impacted John C. Calhoun greatly, especially when the Calhoun group's opposition intensified as a result of Andrew Jackson appointing Eaton as his Secretary of War. At this time, John C. Calhoun was becoming a symbol of opposition to Jackson, as Calhoun's supporters opposed a second term for Jackson and instead wanted to see Calhoun elected president. Andrew Jackson realized that Calhoun was his most visible opponent and felt that Calhoun was using the Peggy Eaton controversy to gain political leverage. As a result, the Peggy Eaton affair aided to the animosity created by the Tariff of 1828, ultimately widening the split between Jackson, whose actions benefited the North, and Calhoun, a vocal advocate for the South.
How did the Tariff of 1828 contribute to sectionalism? The Tariff of 1828, also known as the Tariff of Abominations, was a tariff on all imports to the United States. It was a protective tariff designed to protect industry in the U.S. from cheap British goods by taxing all foreign goods. The tariffs protected the American industry against competition from European nations. Thus, Middle states were longtime supporters of the tariff. Initially, New Englanders were against the tariff, as they favored the free trade that it hindered. However, in the 1820s, influential New Englanders such as Daniel Webster changed their stance to support the tariffs. They realized that it made more Americans purchase their goods, and this was more important than the sales overseas. Wool and textile industries benefited greatly from the tariff. The Southerners were very shocked and outraged by the Tariff of 1828. Southerners were against the tariff because they believed it was discrimination against them and favored the Yankees, also known as the North. They were forced to buy goods from the North because the tariff made the once cheap and affordable British imports very expensive. The Southerners had formal protests and began to plan meetings against the North. The tariff increased sectionalism and began the nullification crisis led by John Calhoun.
The Charleston Slave Rebellion in 1822 was a rebellion in which a well-known slave leader named Denmark Vesey planned a slave rebellion. The plot included thousands of his slave followers to execute their enslavers and temporarily control the city of Charleston, West Virginia. It was planned to free the slaves and then escape to Haiti afterwards. Two people opposing slaves leaked the plan, and many involved were killed by the government. This rebellion added to the anger in the South, which led to more controversy between the North and the South. South Carolinians suspected that the federal government was favoring middle and northern states through the Tariff of 1828. In addition, the Charleston Slave Rebellion and the Missouri Compromise caused many to fear that the federal government would eventually abolish slavery. In the election of 1832, state legislators in favor of nullifying the tariff, known as nullies, gained a two-thirds majority in the state legislature required to nullify a federal law. They subsequently declared the tariff to be void in South Carolina. Andrew Jackson sent military naval reinforcements to South Carolina that further led South Carolinians to consider secession. Senator Henry Clay of Kentucky sided with the South Carolinians and drafted the compromise tariff of 1833, which was narrowly approved by Congress. Congress at the same time passed the Force Bill, authorizing the president to use any military force if necessary, to collect taxes. This bill was nullified by South Carolina, instead of the South agreeing to succeed.
Thank you for watching, and we hope you don't have any questions.